Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert from MS Dynamics World. On this episode, I'm talking to Denis Francoeur, Director of Product from Upland Software, about the latest thinking around computer-telephony integration, or CTI. Upland is the sponsor of this episode, and Denis tells us about how CTI technology has been evolving in recent years. Upland sees CTI as bridging the divide between AI and human expertise, and Denis shares how that vision aligns with new and existing investments in Dynamics 365 solutions, especially as Microsoft advances its Copilot capabilities for sales and service. AI alongside CTI should not be seen as a way to reduce customer service staff, Denis explains, but as a way to elevate customer experiences. All right, well, I'm here with Denis Francoeur. Welcome to the podcast, Denis.
Thanks, Jason. Nice to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk and sort of follow up on a presentation that you recently did for our audience, but maybe we could just start with some introductions. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Again, my name's Denis Francoeur. I'm the Director of Product Operations for the InGenius product line and all of our knowledge and contact center products at Upland Software. I've been with the company for about 7.5 years now, and really am quite familiar with the contact center space. It's an area of passion for me, as I've actually been a contact center agent in the past. And when I think about the problems and solutions that agents have and are looking for, it really hits home when I'm dealing with this stuff on a daily basis.
Yeah, you probably appreciate it on sort of a visceral level that anyone who hasn't worked in that role might not necessarily understand.
Yeah, it's easy to advocate for something agent-focused when I know how much it would have helped me in my seat on those days.
And you mentioned, your time in this space in various ways. And that's where I wanted to start, because CTI itself, computer telephony integration, has been evolving for many years. The contact center has been evolving. Can you talk a little bit more about where you see the technology in the contact center market today?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just start off by thinking about the contact center in general, right? Once upon a time, it was primarily thought to be a place where people make a phone call. You call into the call center, and even the name change to contact center demonstrates the changes that have been happening in the market, where we're dealing with not only just voice, but other channels for interaction as well, hence the contact center moniker. Part of that evolution is sort of gradual change and the adoption of technology, both by organizations and by consumers who are trying to leverage that technology to get in touch with each other. Customers might be inclined to send an SMS or send in a tweet or, a Facebook message or whatever it is that they feel is the appropriate channel for them. Some of those differences are generational, in that you'll see often older audiences or customer bases looking to, engage in more traditional ways. And you have the younger generations who tend to opt more of a self-help first and then see if they need to escalate to things like voice. But CTI as a contact technology is still super important in the contact center market. Realistically, voice interactions are still where the most difficult and complex problems tend to end up. And those, there's a lot of the market that, we touched on this in the webinar that we did, is that a lot of customers are still looking to interact with a human. They don't want to necessarily have their problem solved through multiple permutations of self-help documentation and directions and things like that. They just want somebody who can tell them the real answer, and they want to tell them now. So we're still seeing that. So CTI as a technology is still a real solid base in the contact center. And while we see other channels being introduced, it doesn't change the importance of telephony and phone calls in that communication.
Before we go too much further, I have to at least sort of set the stage here about your viewpoint and maybe outlook on what AI is changing already about CTI in terms of best practices, in terms of ideals, or just in terms of plans and investments?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, realistically, we've all been watching and listening to the news, and there's a lot of really exciting things that are happening in the AI space. And then at the same time, there's what I would call fear-mongering, right? Where agents are worried about losing their jobs due to this technology, or, companies are excitedly looking to the time when they can replace their expensive human, workforce with bots and robots and AI. And realistically, it's going to take a long time before we're ever in that kind of a space. And it's likely to be that, we may never get there. While it's exciting to think about the possibilities, realistically, we're a long way from those kind of interactions or changes with the technology that we have today. And we've seen reports of this where, some super eager organizations have tried to move to a completely AI self-help kind of environment where it's either through strictly digital interactions or even AI agents that might be AI voice agents. And what we've seen is that, the investment there in that technology is not unsubstantial because AI technology is still quite pricey at this point. And we've seen on the flip side that the customer satisfaction scores and things like that have taken a steep nosedive in relation to those implementations. So what you may gain in cost savings, you may lose in terms of customer retention or repeat customers, things like that. So it's exciting. It's something to definitely watch, but it's a little premature to think that, AI is going to replace all the humans in any kind of near term. Really, I think what we want to think about is how does it change the job that the agents are doing so that they can be more effective and efficient, right? Making sure that they're working on only the most complex problems, the most interesting problems. Not only does that mean that you are using those agents most effectively, but it's also the most engaging for those agents, which means that agent retention problem is still a huge thing in many contact centers, with some seeing 50% plus turnover every year. We want to make sure that those agents are sticking around and keeping them doing the interesting work as opposed to the mundane, simple, take a call, make a call over and over and over again. That's really going to help those agents and those contact centers realize the value of the experience those agents bring, especially as it grows over time. With less turnover, those agents are going to get better and better and better at their job. And the technology can help them do that.
Great. Yeah. And I would love to kind of keep that last point in mind as we move ahead here, because I think there probably will be examples or cases you've seen or things I've even heard about from Microsoft's own plans in this space that probably relate there. So I want to maybe get into the topic of, adding CTI to a CRM or contact center solution, and what you're seeing today, either in the Dynamics space when it comes to D365 customers thinking about CTI, or maybe other conversations more broadly. Like what kind of considerations do organizations sort of have in mind when they come to you?
I think the first thing is that, as with any kind of new technology, whether it's CTI or anything else, you kind of want to figure out what are you in it for? And the needs or the things that you're going to end up measuring, your KPIs, are going to depend on what part of the business you represent, because the needs and the things that those parts of the business care about are different. An example would be, at the sort of C-suite level, really you're going to be looking at your top line. Is it your cost savings, revenue generation, things like that? That's what you care about. What's on the books? What are you reporting to shareholders? That kind of level. But somewhere in the middle, you might have like an IT director or head a VP of information technology that's looking at things like implementation costs, maintenance costs, utilization, and the support engagements that are related to the technology that you're looking to bring in. And then at the call center level, whether you're call center manager, supervisor, lead, that kind of thing, you're going to be looking at how is it actually affecting my agents' lives and my customer satisfaction? Is it improving agent efficiency, their ease of use? Am I getting the necessary reporting that I need in order to make good decisions? Are we looking at things like the adoption of the technology and the adoption of other systems that may be related to the technology? As I mentioned earlier, agent retention, right? Are we decreasing turnover by making their jobs more effective, easier to do, less repetition, et cetera, et cetera? And then overall, again, it wraps up to customer satisfaction. You need to have customers and you need to maintain customers in order to do these. So once you have an idea of what sort of things you want to measure, what are you actually trying to see as being the markers you're trying to move, so you get your baseline. And then after you implement the technology, how much did you expect it to move? Did you hit that target? Is there anything that you can do to tweak those numbers to get to where you want, or to tweak the implementation to get to the numbers that you're looking for? Those are really kind of those pieces where you start to look at it as an initial rollout and then the ongoing improvements and maintenance that follow along. When you're thinking about CTI as well, bringing that into a CRM like Microsoft Dynamics, you also want to think about the other channels that these agents and the contact center are interacting with. Are they handling chats? Are they handling emails, SMS messages, socials? Or are they strictly just voice or just a couple of the channels? You want to figure out what that workflow looks like. And are agents going to be fully blended on a day-to-day basis? Or are they going to be taking shifts? One day they're on chats, the next day they're on voice? Or how do you want to work that in the contact center? And then really sort of the next step is figuring out your deflection model. When it comes down to the simple questions and issues that you can maybe service through self-service, is that a path that you're looking to go? And how far do you take that line of things that you would consider simple, such that you can actually do the deflection effectively and keep your customers satisfied? Again, because we talked earlier about if you go too far, it can really tank your customer satisfaction if you don't give them an opportunity to escalate to another channel.
I'm no contact center expert, but that term deflection is certainly one that I've heard before and has been sort of on the minds of contact center professionals for many years, right? That's been a long-term challenge with that, like you said, that balance and doing it effectively, balancing efficiency with customer satisfaction, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that'll kind of keep coming up here as we talk.
Absolutely, it's kind of the key theme of the day, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to take that a little further, where you were just saying, when it comes to CTI, specifically investments in a D365 solution, can you talk a little bit more about actually deploying CTI, where it fits in to a D365 customer service or other apps? I don't know if you want to touch on contact center or not, but where do you see it fitting in typically? Do you have any guidance when companies are considering how to really kind of establish them side by side?
Yeah, for sure. The first thing I think is if you're considering adding it to an existing, say, a D365 investment, or you're looking to augment a new D365 investment, really, because how you approach it might be slightly different. One of the things that we've found over the years is that CTI is an accelerator for adoption. And I don't just mean adoption of CTI, I mean adoption of the CRM. So if you're setting up and kicking off a project where you're deploying D365, you're getting it all set up, you're going to have agents start using it to handle customer interactions. By including CTI in that, you're going to see an acceleration in the adoption of both systems, and that's really going to pay dividends in the end. The other things that you really want to kind of consider are what kinds of information from the phone system would help both your agents and the AIs like Microsoft Copilot make better decisions and recommendations. Are they looking for the info? Would it be helpful to have info that may be collected through the interactive voice recording, right? Through the menus that people go through. They may be inputting data that would be helpful in classifying a call, or maybe, making sure that it gets directed to the right people with the right expertise. It could be about the path that the call came in on, right? Do you support multiple products or things through the same contact center? And the routing of that call and how it arrived could be very important to both the context of, the agent answering the call and making sure that we have the right agents, but also with skill sets, right? And it could be that there are certain topics or qualities that we want to make sure that agents have in order to be able to handle the certain calls. When we really think about AI and how it can really kind of take things to the next level, because those are your kind of, IVR collected info, routing, queues, things like that. That's kind of more traditional CTI, right? You need a good solid baseline, but then you take it to the next level and you say, okay, well, what can feed that Copilot and really make sure that we're getting things not just with context Because, in the past, there's been simple things where if you could get anything, you might be able to pick up on a keyword. And if you typed a keyword or in the notes, or you did something, you could maybe do like a deterministic next best action or something like that. Like, I saw this word, I'm going to key off this knowledge base article or this suggested, flow to be able to do the next thing in that interaction. But with transcription and real-time transcription of those calls, what you enable is the ability to do that with context. And with the large language models and Copilot being able to, really look at that and figure out not only the intent, but the surrounding pieces, now you suddenly start to get the ability to trigger things very intelligently, having intelligent next best actions selected based on context as opposed to just a keyword. It could be alerts that are automatically generated based on the tone or the phrases that are being used in the call, and really looking at things like sentiment in real time, and being able to make sure that if the call starts to go south, that supervisors are alerted and given an opportunity to jump in and provide recommendations or coaching. And there could be even opportunities for on-the-fly coaching by AI to refer to things and remind agents of things. It could be simple things like, hey, there was a long, quiet pause. The customer is not on hold. Should you put them on hold, or maybe you should fill space with conversation because nobody likes an awkward silence? Simple things like that could be, maybe there's a set of terms that, the company had an old set of names of something and they're trying to rebrand. And out of habit, agents are suddenly, saying these old terms as opposed to the new ones. And there might be little pop-up reminders that go, hey, by the way, remember, we're calling it this now. Could be all kinds of things that could make an agent's life easier and help them be better at their job.
Yeah, wow. So many potential possibilities there, right? And really, you only get the chance to, I guess, work with those if you sort of have some of those building blocks in place, in the shorter term, to be ready to see what's possible in a particular organization and what might be coming down the pike, I guess, product-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really nice to look at all the really advanced stuff that you can do, but you got to start at the basics. If you don't have CTI today, the first step is get it, right? You got to have the baseline before you can start to get to the end state. And really, that's an evolution. So definitely something that, if you haven't already started it today, or you feel like your implementation of CTI is a bit rudimentary and it seems to be missing a bunch of the pieces that we've been talking about, then it's maybe an opportunity to look at what you've got and reflect on whether there could be some improvements there.
Yeah, could you say a bit more about that topic? I was thinking as you were talking about, every organization, more or less, or almost, has some kind of phone system, right? That's kind of a given. And they probably have some way of tying their phone system to whatever kind of customer service or support or contact center that they maybe have before you've talked to them. It might be totally rudimentary. It might be like not technically integrated at all. But can you say a little bit more about some of that range that people are coming from? I would have guessed that at the very least, they kind of know the pain points or the points of real inefficiency that they're dealing with when they are planning for, say, a system that includes both CTI and, a newer customer service type of solution like a D365.
Yeah, when we look at the broad landscape of customers, I think that we have to consider that there's completely different, I'm going to say, maturity levels of these organizations. If we think about the startup, where it started off with a handful of people, 4 or 5 people, and they've built up over time, and now they're 50, 60, 70, and now they have a contact center to support for their new product, and yet they're still working like they were 4 or 5 people. Excel spreadsheets to track, support tickets, phone systems that are disconnected from any kind of customer management system, and maybe even, some very rudimentary customer management system. We've seen everything ranging from people taking notes about customers and maintaining everything in OneNote as their primary source of customer data recording, to things like Excel, completely different systems. Part of the issue that comes in is even when you've had gradual maturity and you've adopted some solutions to solve some parts of the problem, You may have a support system that is completely disconnected from your customer management system and is completely disconnected from your phone system. So what you end up with is a lot of movement for these agents between different applications, a lot of swivel chair and a lot of context shifting as you're jumping back and forth. So one of the things that CTI starts to bring into the picture, and it could be part of a larger project where you're starting to integrate more and more of these solutions, or migrating from maybe a standalone, support ticketing system or a sales tool into Dynamics, and you're bringing that stuff in, and that's part of a project, and you're looking to now integrate CTI so that you can start to actually leverage the context of the information that's coming from the phone system. Because right now, when somebody calls in, you have to ask them for their name, try to look it up. It inevitably is difficult to spell, and so you have to ask how to spell it, and then you can't find it, and you're like, is there any other names that would, like, all of these things are the kind of pain points that these organizations that are at different points on the maturity cycle would encounter. But it's pretty much something that everybody has at some point encountered. And so really the goal is to try and make this as seamless as possible, where everything is interacting either as one system or give the impression that it's one system, even though there's a whole bunch of really cool mechanics happening in the background to make it so that it's seamless. And so those are the sort of different pieces and places where people come in. One of the things that, outside of just AI or even CTI in general is, one of the considerations and the conversations that we're having with our customers are around, their technology stacks, right? Because if we talk through these evolutions, both historical, just, phone systems have been around for a long time. As you said, pretty much everybody has one. But what kind of phone system they have can vary a lot. There's large enterprise on-premise, phone systems that people have had for 5, 10, 20, 25 years or more. And then there's other new CCaaS solutions, all-in-one systems that handle voice and all the other channels as voice over IP in the cloud. And they're very different in terms of how they interact with things. But at the end of the day, organizations have what they have today. And it's to figure out, do we need to move, or can we get what we want with what we already have today? So one of the main conversations that we end up having as an integrator is that we talk to them about their technology stack, and they have a decision to make. Do you want to keep what you have today and add a bunch of really cool technology to that technology stack's ability, as everybody has at this point, because AI is the hot topic. Everybody has a CEO or somebody at that level who's, tapping on their shoulder saying, hey, what's your AI story? What's our AI story? We need an AI story. We need to make sure that we're looking at it, leveraging it, taking advantage of all the great benefits it has. And that's sometimes hard to do with legacy technology. But with connectors like the InGenius connector from Upland, you can keep your technology stack. You don't have to change your phone system, and yet you can still add, CTI and the AI benefits that you get from being able to integrate these things all into the Dynamics ecosystem.
I think that summarizes it really nicely. And is it worth talking a little bit more about sort of the broader Microsoft technology landscape? D365 obviously kind of the bread and butter for what we tend to cover at MSDW, but are you having other interesting conversations sort of in the broader sort of Microsoft space today with customers and prospects?
I mean, I think realistically what we're seeing is that everybody's trying to figure some stuff out. And what I mean by that is, as much as we all have many different applications that we work with on a daily basis, and many of them being Microsoft products and applications, what we're seeing is that, more and more we're trying to figure out how we can blend those things together, and where it might be helpful to have the ability to do something like dial a phone call or populate something from one system to another. So definitely an area that we're, continuing to explore. As far as, the technology of CTI goes, does it make sense to integrate with applications outside of a CRM? And if so, what kind and under what use cases? I would say at this point, the CRMs like Dynamics are still the primary place where we want to live and breathe. But, as with anything, as these go, I'm going to say our area of expertise is integration. So if our customers want to, poke at things and say, hey, it would be super handy for the people in my contact center or my organization would be to be able to do, to initiate a phone call from a phone number in an Excel spreadsheet, with a single click. That could be something that we would be interested in. But I would say most of our conversations definitely, center around, CRMs like Microsoft Dynamics.
All right. Very interesting. Well, anything else you wanted to, mention or talk about before we wrap up? I think we've really covered a nice range of topics about what's happening today and probably where you see things going.
The only one thing I think, we want to keep an eye on, keep our minds on, is really around the blend of channel management with humans. And, how the technology plays into that is going to be important. But what we have to remember is that the humans are still what drives all of that. If we think about things like AI's best intent is to provide actionable things that it can take from any kind of interaction. It might be that it's generating a follow-up meeting because it heard you have the conversation through the transcript of the call that, you would be looking to have a follow-up meeting next week. Okay, great. It's going to make one, send out the invite, or at least have it prepared. Want to make sure we're avoiding any kind of hallucinations or things of that nature. So we want to make sure that, those activities are maybe prepped, and then an agent still has to review, hit a button to make sure that those things are accurate before sending them out. But I think what we want to just really focus on is that humans aren't going anywhere anytime soon, as much as our friends in the C-suite might want them to. It's really going to come down to figuring out how to make the most effective use of those humans in conjunction with the technology. And I think one of the things that is going to come out of that is the skill set of leveraging AI. So as an agent, how do I leverage AI in the contact center? Similarly to, when we look at the landscape of generative AI and how much focus recently has been put on people who can provide really good prompts to generate really amazing things with generative AI. I think we're going to be looking at those kind of skills in the contact center for those agents who are really maximizing the work experience with the AI that's provided to them, and for those contact center managers and supervisors and organizations that are really, dialing it in and making sure that they can maximize the value. It's one thing to say you have it, and it's another to do it well.
No doubt. And I think on the flip side of that, one thing that I'm interested in is sort of watching how solutions are able to suggest next best actions that are sort of AI driven, if you will, and how well they kind of guide human activity, efficiently and in a competent way, like you said, as opposed to taking too much action, too much proactive initiative, even in very busy situations like what contact center agents are constantly being faced with, very high stress and high load of information that they have to sort of synthesize and pay attention to at all times, which, going back to the beginning, as you know, can be probably a huge challenge on just a hour by hour, call by call basis.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, the amazing functionalities that things like Copilot provide, where you can do summarization automatically, which means that an agent's not sitting there for, could be minutes, right? You think about the work that an agent has to do after each interaction. Could be several minutes of writing down notes, summarizing what happened, the steps that were taken, make sure all the recommendations are formulated. Usually you've got to send out a follow-up communication to the customer to kind of reiterate what happened. AI can, prep that for you in a matter of seconds as opposed to minutes or longer. And then some of the follow-on activities could be all automatically generated. Like, this is an amazing time kind of to be a contact center agent. And it's really going to be interesting to see how that continues to evolve. I think one of the most interesting pieces that I've sort of seen lately is the idea of hallucinations and having a human to solve it or to identify it, which is great use of humans. But then that learning experience is, being able to say, okay, well, the last time it suggested something like this, the human said that it was not accurate, but they changed it to this. And then the learning that goes on through that AI and how quickly that's going to be able to adapt, I think it ties back to what you were saying. Is like, as it's looking at things like suggesting intelligent next best actions, how quickly does that model evolve and learn from the everyday goings on of that contact center such that it gets better and better over time?
Well, I would say whether for our listeners, whether you're fully sold on where AI is going, or if you still have some questions, hopefully this conversation at least was illuminating of where things might be going and where you should be watching, right? So Denis, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate having you. Really informative and interesting conversation from my side. I appreciate it. Yeah, anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it. And thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure.
This has been another episode of the MSTW podcast. Thanks to Denis for joining. InGenius customers see an average of 50% uplift in agent call handling when integrating D365 with their telephony system. Schedule a one-on-one product demo with the link below in the show notes. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jason@msdynamicsworld.com. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.